بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن سهلا إذا شئت. آمين. Okay. Oh shoot, I forgot to go over that. Anyways, we can save that. Okay, so we have just a few things, just some. Inshallah, I think it'll just take like 5-10 minutes. Just a few last couple of points on the document that I had made, that study guide, which we kind of touched on a little bit while we were going throughout the rest of the guide. And then we also had one of the, I guess, longer discussions about the concept of Naskh. So let's just start from the miscellaneous thing, I guess, from at the bottom of the document, and then I guess we could get into the longer discussions of Naskh. Alhamdulillah, I was able to go over that, as well as the different Qira'at and the abortion discussion. There was also, what's it called? I wanted to talk about the free will discussion. وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ is where it came up. But after making mashra, it seems like it'll probably just be a little too long, a little too complicated. So if you guys are, I'm sure he talks about that in Divine Reality, right? I read that book like 5 years ago, honestly, maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
What was the topic, Melissa? The one you're referring to?
Free will.
Oh, yes, yeah. Mufti Pasha covered it.
Okay, great. Okay, so if you have any questions about that, anyone listening has any questions, inshallah, you could go over it. Divine Reality, inshallah. Sorry, I'll try to speak it. Okay, so miscellaneous. So we have the principle of تقديم ما حقه تأخير يفيد الحصر. Okay, تقديم ما حقه تأخير يفيد الحصر. Okay, either of you guys want to explain this one? Where's my kitab?
I'm really embarrassed. I think I'm like the one who asks about this every time, and then I still don't know what it is for some reason. I just keep forgetting. I apologize.
Let me grab. I should have. Sorry. I just need to grab my Quran. So تقديم ما حقه تأخير يفيد الحصر. So تقديم means to bring something forward. Okay, so it just means to make something precede something else. تقديم ما حقه تأخير. Whose, in reality, its right is that its proper place, its proper placement is that there should be ta'khir in it, meaning it should come later. So you're bringing forward that which comes, which in the sentence grammatically should come later on in the sentence. Yufidu al-hasr. Yafada, yufidu means to, like from fa'ida, means to, it gives the benefit of al-hasr. Hasr is like, you guys are familiar with this term, I'm sure, like the harf innama gives the fa'ida of hasr, it restricts something. It gives the benefit of, yufid al-hasr, it gives the benefit of exclusivity. So, a couple of examples. Maybe you guys could try finding some as well. But we have, I remember, there was ayat number 31 of Surah An-Naba from the start of the second ruku. Inna lil muttaqina mafazan. Whereas it should be inna, as you know, the ism of inna is going to be mansub. Inna mafazan lil muttaqin. Inna mafazan mawjudun lil muttaqin, or something like that. Yeah, something like that. So you're saying inna lil muttaqin mafaza means that Allah Ta'ala is saying it's only specifically for the muttaqin, those people who lived their lives piously and they did the good deeds and they stayed away from the prohibitions, all these different things. Those are the people, only the correct way to be, only those people shall have mafaz, shall have success and achieve something in the akhirah and have a sense of accomplishment on the Day of Judgment. Another example, maybe we could just quickly find one more. Can you guys think of any that we have done? Inna lil muttaqina mafaza. Oh, another one was at the end of what is this? Surah Al-Infitar? Yeah, Surah Al-Infitar, the last ayah. Actually, like the second half of the last ayah. Wal amru yawma idhin lillah. It should be wal amru lillahi yawma idhin. That the zarf should come later, but Allah Ta'ala is saying that command in judgment, al-amr wal-amru, the command and the final judgment on that day belongs to Allah Ta'ala alone. And this is coming, this the reason is being said. Of course, Allah Ta'ala has the amr at all times, right? But it's giving it's like again like a rhetorical device that Allah Ta'ala is saying exclusively He has the ability to make the decision on that day alone. It's not going to be the malaika. You're not going to be able to, you're not going to be able to use your reputation, your money, your fame, your wealth, or anything like that to try to sway Allah Ta'ala's decision or something like that. وَالْأَمْرُ يَوْمَئِذٍ لِلَّهِ يَوْمَ لَا تَمْلِكُ نَفْسٌ لِنَفْسٍ شَيْئًا وَالْأَمْرُ يَوْمَئِذٍ لِلَّهِ. It also gives a fa'idah of, for example, on that day, Allah Ta'ala Himself, He makes a decision. But as we see here in our worldly life, we are able to make decisions. We're able to either do that which is halal, or we have the ability to also do that which is haram. So, and then interestingly, Allah Ta'ala, right in the next ayah, He says, وَيْلٌ لِلْمُطَّفِّفِينَ الَّذِينَ إِذَا اكْتَالُوا عَلَى النَّاسِ يَسْتَوْفُونَ. And He talks about how people in this worldly life are making these bad decisions. For example, He brings at-tatfif. Anyways, that was just a random thing. Any questions regarding this principle? No? Okay. I'm sure there's also, I don't think this is a qaida kulliya. I'm sure there's probably also other reasons as to why maybe this taqdeem might be done. It could be probably a lot of reasons. I'm sure there's probably some list out there in Nahu about, maybe it's just for the sake of balagha, in terms of like the badi' to make it sound better, but it's not necessarily meant to give the fa'idah of hasr or anything like that. So that's there as well. Okay, the usage of madi for future events. I think you had answered this, Arsalan, last time, so I'll let Thoban go for this one if he's available. إِذَا الشَّمْسُ كُوِّرَتْ, for example, when the shams kuwirat, it is like turned inside out, right? But the kuwirat is in the madi form. It's madi majhul, but the point is that it's madi. So why use the madi sigha? Why use the past tense when, of course, this is talking about the day of judgment, which is going to be in the future? وَفُتِحَتِ السَّمَاءُ فَكَانَتْ أَبْوَابًا. نَبَأ. وَفُتِحَتِ السَّمَاءُ. When the doors shall be, we translate it, even when we translate it, we say when the doors shall be opened, when the doors will open. فَكَانَتْ, and when the sky will be open like its doors. Sorry about that. وَفُتِحَتِ السَّمَاءُ. But the madi sigha is used. So the reason this is being done, even though it's a past tense for it's the past tense fi'l, the past tense verb being used for the future, is to give the benefit of surety, of certainty, that Allah Ta'ala is using the past tense. Why? Because in the past there's no doubt about it. These things happened in the past that you know what you did yesterday, and it's not like something can change that, whereas you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So Allah Ta'ala is using the ma'adi sigha, the perfect tense, as I'm sure you guys have heard that as well. He's using the perfect tense to show that there is certainty of its tahaqququl wuqu', that it's most certainly going to happen. Istimrarul asma. I'm just trying to quickly go through this. Istimrarul asma. The player versus someone who plays. That example. So, I could think of one right now. I think that happened in Surah Naba, right? This is where the first discussion happened of talking about the benefit that using an ism over a fi'l will give is that you only ascribe, like, you will only call someone a basketball player when they're like, they're serious about the sport, whereas someone who just picks up the ball every week or every other week, they just play with their friends, you don't call them like a pro or anything like that. So the fa'idah of asma is that it gives the meaning of istimrar, like someone who's constantly involved in that thing. For example, one of them is Ya ayyuhal insanu innaka kadihun ila rabbik. Look at you trying to cover up your smile. Ya ayyuhal insanu innaka kadihun ila rabbik. Oh, those of you, people, innaka kadih, you are in. Allah Ta'ala didn't say innaka yakdihu. I think that's the fi'l on like sami'a from darwa yadribu. But maybe someone could look that up. But Allah Ta'ala didn't say innaka yakdihu ila rabbik. You're not toiling towards your Lord. You're not working towards your Lord. He says innaka kadihun. You are in a constant toiling. You're in a constant struggle towards your Lord, towards the akhirah, and so on and so forth. Another example is actually in the next surah of Surah Al-Buruj. Allah Ta'ala says, إن الذين فتنوا المؤمنين والمؤمنات ثم لم يتوبوا. Those individuals who persecuted and they oppressed and they were a cause of fitna for the believing men and women. المؤمنين والمؤمنات. This is ayah number 10. So Allah Ta'ala didn't say to إن الذين فتنوا الذين يؤمنوا. Right? Allah Ta'ala is testifying to their strong faith that Allah Ta'ala calls them mu'mineen, mu'minat, the ism fa'il, jama' sigha, because they were people who they passed the test. They were the ones who got burned alive. They fulfilled their oath and their covenant to Allah Ta'ala. Okay, so those are just two examples. And different meanings of a fi'il when used with the sila. Actually, we had went over this, and the example we gave was a dua example. Da'a lahu. دعوت له دعوت لطلاب دعوت للمدرسة. I made dua for for XYZ. I made dua for the students. I made dua for the madrasa. دعوت إلى الله لطلاب. I made dua to Allah Ta'ala for the sake of the students. دعوت إلى الله لطلاب. Right? Or if one was to say دعا على الظالمين, that individual is making bad dua. He's cursing, really. You're not going to say dua, right? You're not going to say supplication. You say he's actually invoking curses upon ala zalimin, upon the oppressors. Okay, so those are just a few examples of different meanings of fi'l when used with different silas. One thing I forgot to add, which I think would be a good miscellaneous thing to add, was the qaida, the principle. Let me just type it so maybe anyone who looks at it later. The principle of القرآن يفسر. Sometimes my fingers are like, they just hit all the right keys when I'm typing in Arabic. Other times it's just like a guessing game. القرآن يفسر بعضه بعضا. Anyone want to translate this while I'm typing? القرآن يفسر بعضه بعضا.
Parts of the Quran explain like itself later on.
بعضه يفسر بعضه. بعضه, the fa'il, يفسر. No, not ba'd. بعض. Sorry, my tajweed is a little off. My fault. That's on me. My fault. القرآن يفسر بعضه بعضا. The Quran, some portions of it explain other portions. So بعضه, the fa'il, مرفوع, وعلامة رفعه الضمة ظاهرة. بعضه يفسر بعضه. That some, and then that's the maf'ul bihi, that second. So there's some parts explain other parts. So I think this came up in, if anyone has any other examples, but I could think of وَشَاهِدٍ وَمَشْهُودٍ, where we talked about a whole lot of examples. Allah Ta'ala, He says, وَذَلِكَ يَوْمٌ مَشْهُودٍ, that the day of judgment is going to be the day that is witnessed. So we say, one of the opinions is that mashhud is referring to the day of judgment. The shahid could be Allah Ta'ala, and the mashhud is everything. And all those different ayahs that have the same wording. Wallahu ala kulli shayin shaheed, later on in the surah, they provide clarity to other parts of the Quran. Like even in Surah Al-Inshiqaq, we discussed, فسوف يحاسب حسابا يسيرا وينقلب إلى أهله مسرورا وأما من أوتي كتابه وراء ظهري. And then we read in Surah Al-Haqqa more details about that description. وأما من أوتي كتابه بشماله فيقول يا ليتني لم أوت كتابيه. وأما من أوتي كتابه بشماله فيقول يا ليتني لم أوت كتابيه ولم أدري ما حسابيه يا ليتها كانت القاضية ما أغنى عني ماليه هلك عني سلطانيه. And it talks about some more details about the state of a person who receives the book in their left hand. That's in the middle of Surah Al-Haqqa. So there's just some portions of Quran explain other portions. What was the name of the tafsir? I want to say Adwa'ul Bayan, but I feel like that's wrong. That there's a tafsir. Yeah, go ahead. Yes. No. Sorry, it's Adwa'ul Bayan. Thank you. Okay, so Nazm al-Durar is what I usually think of, and it's usually the wrong answer. That's why I was like, wait. So when I try to think of this book, I always think of Nazm al-Durar, but it's not Nazm al-Durar. Nazm al-Durar, it talks about the connection between ayat. Nazm is, as you guys know, it means like put something. It's used for a poem, Because a poetry is what? You're taking words, you're taking sentences, and you're making something beautiful out of it. Nazm durar, putting together. So a poetry is put together. Nazm durar, putting together pearls, putting together some jewelry. So that's what he calls his title, which is referring to putting together the jewels, which are these individual jewels of ayat, and he puts them together and shows the connection between the ayat, and he shows the connection between like the surahs, from how the previous surah connects to the next surah, and so on and so forth. So that's Nazm Durar. Adwa al-Bayan, however, is kind of similar, where he speaks about, instead of bringing like tafsir, like how we think about it, what he'll do is he talks about topic-wise, in the sense that, yeah, actually, I think I have an example of this, something that Maul Yusuf made for us. If you guys think this study guide is tough, you guys just should see our study guide. I'm looking at it right now. Anyways, I need to get PTSD. Come on, where is it at? It should be here. Oh, here it is. I think this is, yes. Tabas min adwa al-bayan. So he says this. So what this author does is he'll take, like, for example, you'll see a lot of like, for example, in the beginning of Surah Al-Inshiqaq, we talked about إذا السماء انشقت وأذنت لربها وحقت وإذا الأرض مدت وألقت ما فيها وتخلت. وألقت ما فيها وتخلت, when the earth, it throws out that which it's carrying. That which it is carrying. So now, what's another ayah? Are there any ayat that also have a similar topic? And even in 30th, we see in Surah Al-Zilzal, Allah Ta'ala says, وَأَخْرَجَتِ الْأَرْضُ أَثْقَالَهَا, when the earth will throw out, will remove from it all of its treasures. So what he does, he puts together all the ayat topic-wise that have the same. For example, on this page we have about all the different مراحل إهلاك الجبال في القرآن. It talks about all the times that Allah Ta'ala talks about the destruction of the mountains, which we've covered actually like at least twice, 3 times in our half-hour reading. فإذا نفخ في الصور نفخة واحدة وحملت الأرض والجبال فدكتا دكة واحدة. And then ويوم ينفخ في الصور ففزع من في السماوات ومن في الأرض إلا من شاء الله. Oh, actually, this is it's a different topic. But yeah, he gives in Adwa al-Bayan, he just talks about topic-wise and how all, and basically he'll paint a clearer picture in terms of like more details and descriptions of sifat and stuff like that. يوم ترجف الأرض والجبال وكانت الجبال كثيبا مهيلا يوم تكون السماء كالمهل وتكون الجبال كالعهن وبست الجبال بسا فكانت هباء منبثا. So it just talks about this stage after stage after stage, because especially like sometimes when you read in Quran, like if the mountains are being destroyed in successive stages, there's one is just talking about how it gets crushed, the other one's talking, and the last stage is like it becomes absolute dust. Then the ayah that talks about the last stage of what will happen to the mountains might be mentioned in like an earlier surah, as opposed to like something that's going to happen in one of the early stages of the destruction of the mountains. Okay, so that's what that work is used for. Okay, now concept. Yes.
Sorry. Is that Arabic word that's been translated to Urdu?
Ooh, I know what you're talking about. I don't think so. I think that's a different. Adwa al-Bayan is a different one.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember seeing this too, and then it was in Urdu, and I forgot who it was by, but I don't think it was the same one.
I thought I got lucky for a second. I was like, oh well, finally.
You can read Urdu? You can read Urdu?
Yeah.
Oh, nice, mashallah. Okay. Inshallah. Alright, I could probably find some nice Urdu stuff for you, inshallah, or I could ask some people who could send stuff. Okay, anyways, concept of Naskh. Let me just open to I'm reading from التبيان لعلوم القرآن في علوم القرآن by Sheikh Sabuni, the author of صفة التفاسير. الفصل الخامس النسخ في القرآن الكريم وحكمته التشريعية. page 66. Okay, I'll try to quickly go through this. I doubt, I'm assuming that you guys probably don't have a lot of questions about this. To be honest, I don't see why there would be, even for in like a non-Muslim's mind. Like it's pretty simple to grasp once you. I can understand where the ishkal might come up initially for a non-Muslim or for like for just someone else. Yeah, for a non-Muslim, like they're just like, why is there such a thing as abrogation? Why do things need to be canceled out? And then that might cause confusion, but it's not too difficult of a concept to grasp. So I'll just try to go through it super fast. Okay, and this is page number 65 for anyone who has the book. جاءت الشريعة الإسلامية الغراء محققة لمصالح الناس وكان من رحمة الله تبارك وتعالى بعباده أن سن لهم سنة التدرج في الأحكام. So one of the mercies of Allah Ta'ala in reality for us, for His slaves, is that one of Allah Ta'ala's practices is that He gives tadarruj fil ahkam. That Allah Ta'ala doesn't immediately start off with the hardest thing. Right? For example, in the case of wine, there's 3 different ayat that gradually talk about like why it's not a good thing. And that 3rd ayah talks about how it's haram for you guys from now on and no one could touch it, no one could drink it. And if that 3rd ayah is revealed first and the other 2 ayahs like just didn't exist or whatever, then it would have been very, very difficult for the people of that time to have converted in reality, because they would have been like, I don't want to give up my wine. But Allah Ta'ala built in them the kayfiyah, the malaka of being able to, like gain disgust and some sort of like churning. They ended up churning away from it because of the first 2 ayahs that were revealed talking about how it's not the best thing to do. And then eventually when that 3rd ayah did come down, then it was much, much easier for them. So that's one of the blessings of Allah Ta'ala. لتبقى النفوس على أتم استعداد لتقبل تلك التكاليف الشريعة برضا وقناعة وطمأنينة. Because so now the reason this is a mercy is because Allah Ta'ala, He, like I said, He kind of builds in the people, builds in His slaves the ability to readily accept ahkam when the nasikh does come. It's a lot easier to practice upon. ومن المعلوم أن الأحكام ما شرعت إلا لمصلحة العباد وهذه المصلحة تختلف باختلاف الزمان والمكان. So ahkam, laws that Allah Ta'ala sends down, therefore are benefit, therefore are good. They're things that will benefit us in our worldly life and of course in our akhirah. And sometimes that which is good for the people changes between time and place. فإذا شرع حكم في وقت من الأوقات وكانت الحاجة ملحة إليه ثم زالت تلك الحاجة من الحكمة نسخه وتبديله بحكم يوافق الوقت الآخر. So if there's a certain need at a time and then that need goes away, then it's natural that perhaps the law or that might change regarding that need. فيكون هذا التبديل والتغيير محققا للمصلحة, because this is what the changing of that law regarding that issue will now because that issue isn't such a big deal anymore, or whatever, it changed in some way. To change the ruling regarding that thing would also be for the benefit of the people. Okay. G.
Question there. So when they say that if Quran or parts of the Quran were abrogated or like taken back or changed at that time due to the changing of times, some may say that now because we're in different times, we have the responsibility of altering the law or something of that sort because time has changed. So how would you respond to that?
Okay, well, I mean, the reason that the only acceptable legislator to be able to change laws is Allah Ta'ala, and at the time Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So because he's not alive, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and because no one has the ability to speak directly to Allah Ta'ala, then then at that then you don't. There's no legitimate way of establishing any sort of naskh in our day and age. الأنبياء صلوات الله عليهم وسلامه عليهم هم أطباء القلوب. So he says that the prophets are the doctors of the hearts and the ones who rectify the people, and that is why they came with their different laws and their different the different shari'ahs that the different prophets had. This is due to the differing times and place of the people. وجاءت بسنة التدرج في الأحكام, and they all came with this habit of all the sharia, sorry, they have this habit of tadarruj fil ahkam, of one thing changing to another. Okay. Okay, this again. I'm just trying to skim through it, so let's just go through it a little bit faster. Sorry. I try to mark down certain spots to read from, but one thing that Sheikh Sabuni, he quotes from Al-Qasimi, from وجاء في التفسير المسمى محاسن التأويل. There's a tafsir work called محاسن التأويل للشيخ جمال الدين القاسمي, by the scholar, and he mentions that هل يرى الإنسان له مسكة من عقل أن من الحكمة تكليف العرب، وهم من مبدأ أمرهم بما يلزم أن يتصف به، وهم في نهاية الإرقاء الإنساني وغاية الكمال البشري، وإذا كان هذا لا يقول به عاقل في الوجود، فكيف يجوز على الله وهو أحكم الحاكمين بأن يكلف الأمة وهو في دور طفوليته بما تحتمله إلا في دور شبوبيتها وكحولتها. So he talks about how, all around us we see this sort of لتركبن طبقا عن طبق, really, that all the time, especially, okay, let's take for the example, he talks about here human life, that there's certain responsibilities and expectations from a child. There's certain responsibility and expectations from like a young teenager, and even old, a proper teenager, a young adult, an adult, and a father, a grandfather. All these things, responsibilities and laws and expectations change. So similarly, how can you Allah? Why would it be appropriate for Allah Taala to just kind of treat right in the beginning to bring down the final, what they would assume is like what they would call the final verse to be implemented, for the final law to be implemented when the ibad are still in a state of childhood? Does that make sense? That you're now, it's like saying you're giving like a child the responsibility of an adult. So that's one thing that we see just all around us, that expectations and responsibilities change throughout our lives. So in reality, which one's better? For Allah Ta'ala to just straight up make people responsible for things that they're just not ready for? Is that something that's like, that's what you're, people that deny Naskh, that's really what they're calling for, that they're saying that Allah Ta'ala should have just said what He wanted right in the beginning. Is that something that's would have been the best for the people? Would that have been good for the people's religion? Would that have been good for the deen as a whole? Of course not. Rather, it's just appropriate to treat people stage by stage and step by step. تعريف النسخ لغة واصطلاحا. So نسخ literally, means يأتي بمعنى الإزالة. It means to remove something. نسخت الشمس الظل, that the sunlight, it removed the shade. And then he says فينسخ الله ما يلقي الشيطان. It also comes in the meaning of to make something void or null. It also comes in the meaning of يأتي بمعنى التبديل, to change something. والتحويل, to switch something, to do badal. As for in the Sharia, what is its technical meaning in terms of like when it's used by the scholars? فهو انتهاء الحكم وتبديله بحكم آخر. So it's for one legal ruling to have ended and for it to be replaced with another. And we talked about the sabab al-nuzul of, so now one very specific ayah that talks about naskh is ما ننسخ من آية أو ننسها نأتي بخير منها أو مثلها, that whatever ayah which we have done naskh of, or that we have caused you to forget, we will come with something better than it, or something like it. So now the Jews, they said, saying that, aren't you like the Jews of Medina, they would say that, aren't you guys just like, how do you guys follow a guy who keeps changing his mind? He goes here one day, he goes here, and then he goes the opposite way the next. Like, why is that something that you guys follow? Then that's why Allah Ta'ala revealed this ayah. That Allah Ta'ala, that one of the things that He does is that He might cause naskh to happen, that He might cause the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and the Muslims to forget an ayah, but He always replaces it with, He will end up replacing the ayah with a different hukam. Then he answers the question, is naskh waqi' fi shara'i as-samawiyya? Okay, we can skip that. Okay, so now what are the proofs that naskh takes place? Okay, as we just said, ما ننسخ من آية أو ننسها نأتي بخير منها أو مثلها. Ayah number 106 of Surah Baqarah. Ayah 106 of Surah Baqarah. It's very, very clear that literally, like, this whole concept of naskh is right here. That Allah Ta'ala, He does not do naskh of an ayah, nor does He make it be forgotten, except that He brings an ayah better than it, or something similar to it. وقالوا فهذه الآية صريحة في وقوع النسخ. This is like very very clear. Another ayah is قوله تعالى وإذا بدلنا آية مكان آية والله أعلم بما ينزل قالوا إنما أنت مفتر بل أكثرهم لا يعلمون قل نزله روح القدس من ربك بالحق. سورة النحل ayah number 101 and ayah number 102. 101 102 of Surah Al-Nahl. Allah Ta'ala says that he'll change one ruling to a different ruling. He'll change one ayah to a different ayah, and Allah Ta'ala, He is obviously aware of what He's doing. Wallahu a'lamu bima yunazzil. Qalu innama anta muftar. They call you a liar, saying that like the objections that the Jews had. Bal aktharuhum la ya'lamun. Rather, they just don't know. They don't understand the reality. قل نزله روح القدس من ربك بالحق. So and then Allah Ta'ala says that it is the Jibreel alayhi salam who's coming down on behalf of Allah Ta'ala, revealing the truth. Of course, this is like dakhal muqaddar almost, that the reason that the people will have a problem with this, the reason that the Jews were calling out Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is because that they think that he's just making it up from his own side. But Allah Ta'ala says, no, قل نزله روح القدس. It's Jibreel alayhi salam is coming down with it. Another very clear example that we have of Naskh is the whole changing of the Qibla from the Bayt al-Maqdis in Jerusalem to the Kaaba as it is today, and no one disagrees on this, right? This is right on the first page of second para, the first page of second juz, Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah number 144. This is that whole scene about how قَدْ نَرَى تَقَلُّبَ وَجْهِكَ فِي السَّمَاءِ فَلَنُوَلِّيَنَّكَ قِبْلَةً تَرْضَاهَا فَوَلِّ وَجْهَكَ شَطْرَ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ. That's on the first page of the second para. Another proof is, okay, that's fine. That's three different ayahs that talk about this. Then he talks about the aqsam of Naskh, which we could skip as well. And he talks about, okay, that's that. So we see very clearly, we'll just end that there. We see very clearly that through other ayat of Quran, the concept of Naskh is established. That should end the conversation there. And if there's any other, and as for the aqli dalail as to what's the point of it, I mean, like we discussed earlier, I think that's the first thing we talked about, is that this is just, it's actually a rahmah from Allah Ta'ala upon the slaves, that He allows them to slowly and surely get closer to the deen, as opposed to just bringing down a more difficult final ruling onto them forever. Okay? I think Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she said that if the ayahs, or if the commands and the prohibitions of, you're not allowed to commit zina anymore, and you're not allowed to drink wine anymore, no one in the entire peninsula would have accepted Islam. No one, that's what Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, she's saying herself. So this is, of course, this is a rahmah for the people that we have that they have the ability to build themselves and to build themselves towards becoming closer to deen, and then it'll be easier for them to accept the commandments. Okay, as for the discussion about the different qira'at discussion, okay, we got 20 minutes. Let's see if I can do this. This is the next chapter. نزول القرآن على 7 أحرف والقراءات المشهورة. Okay, so what is this? What are qira'at? Okay, as you guys have probably heard a lot, alhamdulillah, DS especially, we have the opportunity to hear a lot about the different qira'at, and people are reciting them. Yeah, so you guys are familiar with that there's something out there that are you guys are familiar with the idea that there's different ways to read the Quran, right? Some people aren't even aware of that, so when they first hear of this, and they start to get really confused and stuff like that, right? But you guys are familiar with the idea that there's different ways to read the Quran. So now, most people, when they first get this, when they first hear this, and it almost it's a big deal for them, because it's like, one, I may not be a good Muslim, I may not know Allah, but I know that the Quran has been unchanged for 1400 plus years. That's what they could be like, they'll champion that, they'll wear that on their chest, so that when they hear this, it starts freaking them out. So now, what are the proofs that there is different ways to recite Quran? Okay, so right. So he says in التمهيد لما خلق الله الخلق جعل لكل منهم شرعة ومنهاجا وكان للعرب لهجات متعددة. That when Allah Ta'ala created the creation, They each have a specific way, a specific like mode of handling themselves. For the Arabs, they had a multitude of languages. The people in the Arabian Peninsula at the time, they had a very like they had a multitude of dialects. Sorry, a multitude of dialects. اكتسبوها من فطرتهن واكتسبوا بعضها من جيرانهم. وكانت لغة قريش لها الصدارة والذيوع لأسباب. That okay. So now, basically, what he's going to talk about is like how the Quraysh, because they were the people who were the guardians of the Kaaba. A lot of these different people, these different tribes from all over the peninsula would come and visit them, and they would end up learning a lot about their dialects. They would incorporate language into their own Qurashi language that just expanded their vocabulary and so on and so forth. Right? Basically, their Arabic ended up getting richer and richer. The people of Quraysh, because of all these different tribes coming out and coming to them, literally. Then he brings the ayah, "Inna anzalnahu Qur'anan Arabiyyan la'allakum ta'qilun." That this Quran was revealed in the Arabic language so that you can understand. So now, one of the things that he's going to argue is that, let's read the hadith first, and we'll see what the argument is. He says, so what are the adillatu nuzul al-Quran ala sab'ati ahruf? What are the proofs that the Quran has been revealed in these different modes of recitation? So روى البخاري ومسلم. So this is in البخاري الشريف and Muslim Sharif, right? في صحيحيهما عن ابن عباس رضي الله عنه أنه قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أقرأني جبريل على حرف فراجعته فلم أزل أستزيده ويزيدني حتى انتهى إلى 7 أحرف. That Jibreel alayhi salam, he taught me one way to read Quran. And then I went back to him. And I kept returning back to him. I kept asking him for more. أستزيده. I kept asking him, seeking more, and seeking more, and seeking more, until I reached 7 أحرف. وزاد مسلم قال ابن شهاب بلغني أن تلك 7 في الأمر الذي يكون واحدا لا يختلف في حلال ولا حرام. And Ibn Shihab, Zuhri, he adds a comment that this these 7 ahruf, these multitude of ways of reciting, the differences between them aren't regarding like, okay, one qira'ah says that this thing is halal and another qira'ah says that it's actually not halal, it's haram. That's not the differences. It's just that, as we're going to see, it could be possibly in like the ways of reading it, and like I said in the beginning, it could accommodate for the different tribes and their different dialects, and just to make it easier on them. Mufti Rada, he talks about this as well in his Fatawa Dawam Zakaria, and he doesn't like that argument. He actually goes at it another way, which I'll probably end off with his opinion at the end. And another proof is Rawal Bukhari wa Muslim, again, the two most authoritative hadith works, the two Sahihs of Imam Muslim and Imam Bukhari. Says that Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, okay, it's a very long story, so I'll just summarize it, that one day he was just like in the masjid and he saw one of his Sahabi companions started reading Quran, they started reciting Quran. هشام بن حكيم is his name. سمعت هشام بن حكيم يقرأ سورة الفرقان في حياة رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فاستمتعت لقراءته وإذا هو يقرأها على حروف كثيرة لم يقرأنيها رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. This Hisham ibn Hakim, he started reading Surah Furqan while he's in the masjid, and he started reading it in such a different way that, this is not how Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught me to read it. So then he started getting upset, and he literally basically dragged him to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he's like, yo, what is like? Check this out. So then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he asked him, okay, please read Surah Furqan. So he read, and then he asked Umar radiallahu anhu, please read Surah Furqan. So then he read, and he says that, where's the famous line? He says, هكذا أنزلت. This is how they've been revealed. This is how the Surah Furqan has been revealed. It's been revealed in both ways. ثم قال إن هذا القرآن أنزل على 7 أحرف. That this Quran has been revealed in different modes of recitation. فقرأوا ما تيسر منه. So read that which is easiest for you. So what is the point of what we see clearly here? What is the point of the 7 أحرف of the different ways of reciting? فقرأوا ما تيسر منه. For ease, is to make it easy for people to read. Okay. ثالثا, okay, we can skip that one. It's all very long. هو الحافظ أبو يعلى في مسنده الكبير أن عثمان قال يوما وهو على المنبر. Okay, so Hafiz Abu Ya'la, in his Musnad work, he says that, he brings a narration that Uthman radiallahu anhu, okay, the third Khalifa, he was standing one day on the minbar, probably Jumu'ah time, and he was أذكر الله رجلا سمع النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إن القرآن أنزل على 7 أحرف كلها شاف كاف. He says that Uthman ibn Affan, the third Khalifa, says that he was standing on Minbar and he narrates this hadith that the Prophet ﷺ said that the Quran has been revealed on these different modes of recitation, sab'ati ahruf, kulluha shafin kafin, that they're all complete, they all fulfill the qira'ah, they're all considered Quran, as he says. لما قام فقاموا حتى لم يحصوا فشهدوا أن الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم قال أنزل القرآن على 7 حروف كلها شاف كاف. فقال عثمان رضي الله عنه وأنا أشهد معهم. So now when he said this, when Uthman رضي الله عنه, when he was standing on the minbar, he said this, who's his audience? The audience of Uthman رضي الله عنه is all these other big Sahaba, right? It's all these tabi'een, the greatest people after the Sahaba. What did they say? They all stood up when he said this, and they say and then they stood up and they said, we all also testified that we heard Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam say this. And then he says, وَأَنَا أَشْهَدُ مَعَهُمْ. And he says that I also testify that he said this. So over here we see a possible ijma' of the Sahaba, a possible consensus of the Sahaba, all agreeing to this matter, which is a qat'i proof, a definitive proof in and of itself. This is something similar to the first hadith that we read, that where he said that فَرَاجَعْتُهُ حَتَّى أَسْتَزِيدُ مِنْهُ فلم أزل أستزيده حتى ويزيدني حتى انتهى إلى 7 أحرف. So he says that when Jibreel alayhi salam was teaching him and he taught him to read in على حرف واحد, على حرف, he taught him to read in one way, and then he's like, إن أمتي لا تطيق ذلك, that my nation, they can't handle just being restricted to one way of reading. So he went back to him and then he got a second way of reading, and he's like, إن أمتي لا تطيق ذلك, that they can't handle just 2 ways, I need more. So then until this فأيما حرف where is it at? إن الله يأمرك أن تقرأ أمتك القرآن على 7 أحرف فأيما حرف قرأوه عليه فقد أصابوا. That Allah Ta'ala, so then he ended up getting all these different ways of reading, and then he's told that all of these different ways of reciting the Quran, فقد أصابوا, they're all correct. Okay, and last one, sorry. لقي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم جبريل على عند أحجار المروة فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم لجبريل إني بعثت إلى أمة أميين فيهم الشيخ الفاني والعجوز الكبيرة والغلام، قال فمرهم فليقرؤوا القرآن على 7 أحرف. قال الترمذي حسن صحيح. ففي لفظ فمن قرأ بحرف منها فهو كما قرأ. So then he gives some variations. He says that in my ummah, they're unlettered people. Like obviously the people of Arabia, they weren't like they depended on the oral tradition, right? They weren't they didn't know how to read and write. Most of them were illiterate. So he says that my nation has these really old men, these really old women. It has all these little children in it. It'll be too difficult for them to be only restricted to one way of reading. So that's why there is these sab'ati ahruf, the different modes of recitation, so to make it easy for the people. Okay, so we'll stop there for the dalail. So those are all the different ahadith that prove that there is such a thing as reciting the Quran in different ways. الحكمة من نزول القرآن على 7 أحرف. So now what's the wisdom behind it? As we said, التيسير على الأمة الإسلامية. So it just makes the matter of reciting Quran a lot easier for people. وخاصة الأمة العربية التي نزل عليها القرآن, especially for the people, for the Arab people who are already used to their specific ways of saying certain words and whatnot. Another one is that's fine. Now, what are these 7 ahruf, sab'ati ahruf, as I've said multiple times over? People think, this is Mufti Allah's opinion, people provide like different lists of what the sab'ati ahruf means. Do you guys have any ideas what the sab'ati ahruf might be? There's one answer that kind of comes like straight away to the mind.
Is that just like a harf means like, is that the
Harf. Yeah, harf, haruf, yeah. But obviously it's not being like used literally.
It's like accents? 7 accents?
Okay, so now, well, if you say like dialects or accents, as you said, then the problem is that it could possibly be there was actually a lot more than just seven in the Arabian Peninsula. And even if you did try to break it down to the main seven, as scholars have done, there's, for example, scholar A, he gave the list of seven, but then scholar B, who's also a big scholar in the field of Qira'at, he'll give a different list of seven. So now, okay, if all these tribes are like worthy of being on the list, then they're more than seven, so then it just doesn't fit, it doesn't match up, right? Because, yeah. And what I was referring to is that people think it's the seven Qira'at, right? The seven Qira'at of أبا جدهاز حطي كلم رفع all that of like as we حفص عن عاصم ورش عن نافع ابن كثير مكي oh man I need to go over my list of قراءات bro. Okay عاصم حمزة كسائي who else Shami and was that seven? I think that was seven. Well, people think it refers to the seven qurra with their two rawi's each, and that becomes like the 14 riwayat. But the thing is, the problem with that is that what about the three extra qira'at that are added to the seven, which makes it 10? So the answer that Mufti Sab gives, Mufti Radha al-Haq Sab, and it is probably very, very like easy to understand. Actually, okay, so some other list that people give is, let me just say Mufti Sab to the end, is that they say that the sab'ati ahruf is the usual, that not usual, the seven differences between the qira'at. What happens is that there is, for example, the sigha might change. Let's see if he gives examples here. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِأَمَانَاتِهِمْ وَعَهْدِهِمْ رَاعُونَ. Then the word أَمَانَاتِهِمْ could also be read وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِأَمَانَتِهِمْ. So the jama' is in one qira'ah, and the plural is used in one riwayah, and then the wahid, the singular, is used in another riwayah. ربنا باعد بين أسفارنا. ربنا بعد. Is that the... Yeah. ربنا بعد بين أسفارنا. So again, the fi'l, it changes, and it still fits with the نسخة. اختلاف الإبدال سواء كان إبدال حرف بحرف كقولك وانظر إلى العظام كيف ننشزها becomes ننشرها. Hopefully I'm reading that right. But basically, the list they give is like seven different things that might happen between the different qira'at, which is اختلاف الأسماء, that sometimes the اختلاف الأسماء إفرادا وتذكيرا وفروعهما, that sometimes they're in one riwayah the jama' is mentioned, another riwayah the wahid is mentioned. On one riwayah the masculine is version, another riwayah the feminine is mentioned. اختلاف بالتقديم والتأخير فيقتلون ويقتلون. It's also read فيقتلون ويقتلون. Basically it's flipped around. اختلاف وجوه الإعراب كقوله سبحانه ما هذا بشرا. قرأ ابن مسعود بالرفع ما هذا بشر. Okay, that's in the رواية ابن مسعود. قوله سبحانه وتعالى ذو العرش المجيد, as we've discussed, and ذو العرش المجيد in Surah Buruj. Okay. Yeah, so so now those are possible seven different things that may happen. However, the list, if you try to only limit it to seven, you're not going to get very far because there's so many other things that happen in different qira'at in between them. Now, there's only 5 minutes left. So now, basically, what Mufti Saab says is that sab'ati ahruf just means sab'a is used by the Arabs for a lot. Okay, a lot. Just like how if there's like a bunch of, I don't know, let's say you walked into a stadium and it was just full of people. Someone asked you, hey, how many people do you think are in here? You're going to be like, there's like got to be like 1 million people. Right? You say, you're not saying million, that's like your actual estimate of your factoring in like how many people per row, how many people per stands, how many people, you're not doing the math or anything. You're not doing none of that. You're just saying 1 million people is just being used for a lot. You look at a forest, how many trees do you think are there? It's got to be like 1,000. Like there's certain numbers that we have in English that just automatically, you're not trying to use them for the actual number. You're just trying to signify the signify the just that there's a lot present. So Mufti Saab mentions that there is sab'ati ahruf is referring to the multitude of ways of reciting Quran. So this could cover the different qira'at, this could cover the different riwayat, this could cover like the additional three qira'at with their six riwayat that I mentioned with them, um, which is what I actually have a paper on this that I wrote in. It has been like third year maybe at most. Definitely not in fourth year. I don't think I wrote this bad in fourth year. But it's like I was like, okay, I can send it to these guys. Great, I have a paper written. It's so bad. It's like so terrible. Okay, fourth year. Wow, fourth year. Mustafa. Terrible. Very disappointed in that guy. It's like really disgusting. Maybe I could just try going through it again. Okay, any questions? How about this? Let me just open up the door for any questions, or maybe you guys can play devil's advocate if you want, and questions that you feel like people would ask, or things like objections that you've heard, or things like that. Go ahead, Arsalan.
So one thing that I wondered a lot is obviously there was no recording. So how can we test the chain of narrators that come down with each recitation? Like, how do we know that things didn't evolve without, like, like telephone? Like, how do we know? Like, that's a very common, I've heard, argument.
Okay, so two things is that there wasn't any writing. That's not true, because Uthman radiallahu anh, he himself is the one who actually was this. Abu Bakr radiallahu anh actually was the first to spearhead the project of Jam'ul Quran. And I think that's actually the chapter after the Qira'at, or it might be like two chapters before, something like that, in this work, where he talks about the process of what the Sahaba did after the demise of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and how they were actually the ones who compiled the Quran officially into what we have today. And those manuscripts are still present. At the same time, even if you want to take it even a step back, the writing down the Quran actually was present in the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as well. We see there's hadith that say that don't write down the hadith. Don't write down hadith. That's what the hadith says. It says don't write down hadith. Okay, and then the explanation is that why? Because during this time, especially during like during this time, the main thing that should be written down is the Quran, and we don't want hadith and Quran to get mixed up, and then people don't know what the difference between the two. That's that's okay. That's during the life of Rasulullah, and then the project was pretty much spearheaded by Abu Bakr radiallahu anh after the death of after the Abu Bakr radiallahu anh took over that project, and then after him, Uthman radiallahu anh was a spearhead who really moved forward with it. He made official copies and he had them sent out throughout the peninsula, and then the people would rely on the Quran, the official Qurans that were written by him and all the other Sahabas that were present with him. So then that was like the agreed upon text that's considered Quran. Now, how do we know that they're sound? This is great. Great question. I'm actually right on this section in my paper that I have. So, are you familiar with the term mutawatir? Oh, we talked about this actually, right? Yes. So, the Quran is considered mutawatir. All in, let me just add more detail. All the different qira'at and riwayat are considered mutawatir. So much so that, like you said, how do we know that the game of telephone didn't possibly affect this? Is because that's the whole point of mutawatir, right? That the fact that it first of all, it can't. Like the fact that everyone's doing the same thing, the fact that everyone's reciting the same Quran, the fact that everyone's it's not possible that they all made the same mistake, and it's not possible that they all concocted the same lie. Basically puts all these qira'at and the riwayat at the level of mutawatir. So much so, actually, is that those riwayat and those readings of Quran that were not like everyone else's, those were actually singled out and like preserved as well to show you that, hey, these ones don't match the rest. These are what we call the shadh riwayat, which I think there's a number of those as well, which is just like also a science that is studied to see because I don't want to get into like the hadith, that's a more ahkam aspect of it, but basically the scholars were perceptive enough to understand that, hey, let's single out those qira'at as well, and show you why those qira'at and those ways of reading Quran actually don't match up with all the hundreds of other recitals of the Quran all over the Islamic world at this time. Does that help? Okay. Any other possible questions you think people may ask regarding qira'at? I think another common thing is like, which I touched on, is that like, what's the, people think that the qira'at might, one thing says do this, one thing says this is halal, this is haram, and then a different qira'ah of the same ayah says that it's actually haram. That's not the case. The qira'ah is just mainly just for, I mean, from my experience of doing qira'at, it's like most of it is just like ease of recitation. Hopefully that recording and stop. Okay, great. Okay, yeah, just more for ease of recitation, like the imalas and like I'm sure you guys have heard of people recite like Sabih Isma Rabbika La'aleh and all those different things. More, a lot of it is just like ease and like a different ways of reciting, which I'm assuming is like we said, it's just easier for different tribes, for different dialects to adopt those and to read in those qira'at. Other, I could try to find maybe some good papers on this topic. I'm sure there has to be a lot available.
Are there any like texts or works written on what the different sounds are, or like what the syllables, the differences are in the syllables, like in the Arabic language? I don't know how to like word that differently,
You mean,
but like
you mean like what
describing the difference in sound.
Just the sound only?
Yeah.
Not that I'm aware. I mean, because the thing, I mean, how much, like, how would reading, like, how would you write, how would that be available in a book, you know?
No, exactly. That's why I was just like, I don't know. Like, I guess I'm confused about that. Like, so it's just like right now, it's just a bunch of asanid coming down from different people that all read Quran the same way. Like, or I don't know if my question is making sense, but
think about it. Everyone recites Hafs in the same way.
Yeah, but like some of them, like for example, the one that you just read with Surah Ala, like
how is it that myself and like Egyptian Qur'an read the same way then?
Yeah, exactly. That's my question. Like this, it's just like. So basically, there's a bunch of different like there's not just one sanad, right?
No, that's the whole point of mutawatir. It's not one sanad.
Okay, that's what I was confused
the
about.
The point of mutawatir is that like, because if like you said, like let's say my sanad and like sanad of like a person halfway across the world, they all meet up at one person. That whole tawatir argument drops, because tawatir is that there's multiple people in each generation. Meaning, so because if it was one person, you could just say that he's the one that messed up or whatever. Right? But then tawatur, here, let me just read. I wrote down so I'm already over time, but it is that rank when there has been mass transmission and there is no possibility of such a large group of people all gathering to spread this lie or making the same mistake. Okay, it actually doesn't mention it, but basically, it has to have multiple people in each generation. You can't just all meet up eventually at one guy. Sorry, we're already over time. If you guys have any other questions, you could stay back. Soban, if you want to go, if you guys want to go, then go ahead, inshallah.
Sorry, one last question, real quick. It's a good question. I apologize if you covered this before. But one thing that I've been wondering throughout this course so far is just when we refer to the connection between surahs and stuff like that. When the Quran was compiled, there are certain ayat that are within the same surah that are Makki and others are Madani. How are they compiled together that way?
This is from Rasulullah. So
if the Quran was compiled compiled after the Prophet passed away, but before he passed away, he said that this is the order of it.
Yeah, I mean, he would recite in a certain order, and then that order would be memorized like that.
Oh, okay.
I think Mufti Saab also. Okay, so Mufti Saab also he addresses this in his fatwa, which I could find that as well, and I could send a screenshot of that. Fatwa Dam Zakaria is. You guys are all aware of Mufti al Haq. Yeah, so that's like his where he just talking about anything and everything. You have a question, looking for the al-Zakariya first, honestly. And you can probably find it there. This is in the first volume, which has been translated into English. So inshallah, I'm going to send some screenshots of that about this question onto the group chat, inshallah. All right. A great resource. I'm enough with this. A great resource for this Quran stuff and its preservation is actually Dr. Mustafa Al-Alami's work, History of the Quran. Let me just look up the official title. Dr. Mustafa Al-Alami Quran History Book. The History of the Quranic Text. That's what it's called. The History of the Quranic Text from Revelation to Compilation. It is a scholastic masterpiece that methodically follows the path of the Quranic text from divine revelation to comprehensive compilation. So this is like really, really great. Like really, really great. And it's available in PDF and on archive PDF form. It's in English. And if I remember correctly, hopefully I'm not mixing him up. He's like a Deobandi trained scholar, and then he like graduated at like Oxford or something. Hopefully I'm not mixing him up with someone else. But he was like huge. Okay, I'll stop there. Sorry for going 6 minutes over time, guys. I guess we can go over the abortion thing, and then we'll be done. We should be done. Assalamu alaikum.